While many people opt for toast or cereal as their breakfast choice, I diverge from this norm. For me, breakfast is about consuming scorpions. This unusual habit stems from an incident involving my brother. He was assisting our dad with some roofing work when he tragically fell, sustaining a severe head injury. The doctors were uncertain about his survival, but he miraculously pulled through. However, the accident left him with significant brain damage. Discussing this is difficult for me, but I must admit that I feel uneasy around my brother now. There was an incident that heightened this feeling. Once, while our parents were out and I was alone with him, I felt a sharp pain on my ankle. To my horror, I discovered my brother biting me, drawing blood. Despite my screams, he wouldn't release his grip until I forcibly moved my leg to escape. This incident made him seem more like a wild animal than the brother I knew. I informed our parents about what happened, but their response was to reprimand me, emphasizing my responsibility to care for him and attributing his actions to the injury, with an expectation that he would eventually recover. However, as time progressed, his behavior didn't improve. It reached a point where I had to install a lock on my bedroom door, as I would often wake up to find him wandering into my room, which was deeply unsettling. This situation also impacted my social life, as my friends, finding my brother intimidating, stopped visiting. If only they understood the full extent of the situation. At night, while in bed, I could hear my brother's unsettling screams, his laughter, and the sound of his fists pounding against my wall. Part of me wanted to empathize with him, but the fear was too overwhelming, especially when I saw the scar from his bite on my ankle. This constant reminder led me to suggest placing him in a specialized facility for those with brain injuries. However, my father's harsh response was a threat to send me to a facility instead if I continued to insist. Resolved to fend for myself, I recognized that any harm that came to them was a consequence of their own decisions. There was a particular day when I was watching over him, and his gaze upon me was unnerving, his eyes wildly moving, almost signaling a malicious intent. To distract myself, I turned to the television and chanced upon a documentary about scorpions, focusing on bark scorpions, the most venomous in the US. Their sting could induce symptoms like numbness and vomiting for up to 72 hours. Something about these scorpions captivated me. Their venomous nature seemed almost enviable at that moment, a symbol of invulnerability. Driven by this newfound interest, I began researching and decided to find one in person. The documentary had mentioned their preference for citrus trees, and coincidentally, there was a citrus farm nearby. After school, I visited the farm, asking the owner if I could explore the area, not to steal fruit but to find scorpions. His reaction was a mix of surprise and skepticism. After I explained my intent, he seemed taken aback but then requested that I follow him. He showed me to a secluded spot behind a large shed, where a tank housing numerous scorpions was situated. I was immediately drawn to it, pressing my face against the glass to observe them closely. Eagerly, I asked if I could purchase some. To my surprise, he offered them for free, expressing his disdain for these poisonous and nasty creatures and his relief at not having to dispose of them himself. That encounter felt serendipitous. He carefully placed the scorpions in a shoebox, warning me about their potentially lethal sting. Returning home, I found an old fish tank to house them. However, during the transfer, one scorpion escaped. Reacting instinctively, I crushed it underfoot, its body making a distinct crunching sound. This led to a rather bizarre idea. I had read somewhere that scorpions could be eaten. With my parents out and my brother at our grandmother's, I found myself alone. I heated some oil in a pan and proceeded to fry the scorpion, having first removed its stinger. The thought of consuming it was surreal, and I even recorded the moment, thinking it could bring me some sort of fame. To my surprise, the scorpion tasted somewhat like popcorn. I posted the video on Instagram, curious about the reactions of my modest follower base. Later that night, I conducted an odd experiment. I quietly entered my brother's room while he slept and bit his toe, hoping to test if I had somehow absorbed the scorpion's venom. Instead of any venomous effect, I received a swift kick to the face, causing my nose to bleed. My brother remained asleep, unaware of his reaction. Disappointed in my lack of venom, I resolved to continue consuming scorpions, believing it might eventually have an effect. The next morning, I found myself oddly craving scorpions again. Recalling the documentary's mention of their protein content, I thought they might be beneficial for that day's physical education class. On another occasion, I chose a smaller scorpion, hurriedly preparing it due to the fear of being discovered by my mom. But then I heard footsteps on the stairs. It was my brother. In a panic, I quickly turned off the stove and, without thinking, put the still-moving scorpion in my mouth. Before I could react, it crawled down my throat. Frantically, I gulped down water to swallow it completely, realizing there was no turning back. My brother, in a taunting gesture, stuck his tongue out at me, and impulsively I confronted him, warning him never to do that again. I was surprised at my own assertiveness, a side of me I hadn't recognized before. Then, in a moment of heightened emotion, I bit him. He immediately reacted, his face turning red, and I momentarily thought I had poisoned him. Instead, he began screaming and ran to alert our parents. At least, I thought, he did retaliate. Perhaps my actions had some effect after all. In the midst of this, a horrifying realization struck me. I had removed the stinger from the scorpion I had just consumed. I braced myself for the worst, expecting to feel ill. But unexpectedly, I felt a surge of empowerment, as if I had gained control over the situation, reversing the roles with my brother. This experience solidified my decision to eat scorpions regularly for breakfast. Given the risks associated with cooking them, I opted to eat them raw, always carefully removing the stinger first. One morning, after consuming a particularly large scorpion, I overheard two girls at school whispering about my brother as I passed by. Despite the frustration my brother caused me, I knew deep down it wasn't his fault. To get back at those girls who were talking about him, I devised a plan. The next day, I watched as they simultaneously opened their lockers, and the moment they saw the scorpions inside, their screams filled the hallway. One scorpion even seemed to chase them, which made me laugh uncontrollably. However, this meant I had used up 2 of my scorpions. Strangely, I found a peculiar satisfaction in eating scorpions. I was thankful not to be allergic to their venom, as some people are. I even developed a preferred way of eating them, dipped in peanut butter, which helped prevent their claws from pinching my tongue. One evening, caught up in the excitement of my locker prank, I forgot to relock my bedroom door. I returned home to find my brother in my room, dangerously close to my scorpion tank. In a rush to stop him, I accidentally allowed one scorpion to nearly escape. In my attempt to catch it, I was stung. The pain was intense and immediate, spreading through my body. I feared I might be allergic and started panicking, realizing my brother wouldn't know how to call for help. As I yelled at him, he just laughed, and the last thing I remember before passing out was him moving toward the tank. I regained consciousness in a hospital bed alone at first. Then I noticed my brother in another bed, also in the hospital, but unconscious. When my parents arrived and saw me awake, they burst into tears and then into screams. They questioned me about the scorpions in my room and informed me that my brother had been stung as well and was still in a comatose state. The whole situation turned into a nightmare. My attempt to feel empowered by consuming scorpions had backfired horribly, leading to both my brother and me being poisoned. The thought of losing him was unbearable. Feeling somewhat better, I decided to take a walk for some air, only to encounter the 2 girls from school and their parents. Their confrontation was intense. The girl's father accused my parents of negligence, suggesting that I could have caused serious harm. I was bewildered at how they knew about my involvement until I remembered the video I had uploaded. Did they see it? While my parents sat in stunned silence by my brother's bedside, one of the girls called my brother a freak, insinuating that he might have eaten a scorpion too. When my mom found out about the video, her reaction was one of shock and horror. She began crying and avoided looking at me. After the girls and their parents left, following my parents' apology, I overheard my mom whispering to my dad, questioning my sanity. Before I knew it, doctors had restrained me and were transferring me to a different part of the hospital. As I was moved to a windowless, padded room, the irony of the situation dawned on me. It was my brother who had been considered unstable, yet now I was the one seen as mentally disturbed. The video of me eating the scorpion had gone viral, causing widespread alarm and fascination. Fortunately, my brother eventually recovered and was discharged, but my parents left me in the hospital. After a month in the psychiatric ward, I was released, ironically fulfilling my father's earlier threat of institutionalization. Back at school, the whispers were no longer about my brother, but about me. Despite everything, I found myself missing the taste of scorpions, though I was nowhere near ready to try eating one again. Maybe, I thought, maybe next year.